My name's Andy. I'm a travel filmmaker from Manchester, England, and in this series I'm going to be solo backpacking around Israel.
Israel is a country often overlooked as a travel destination due to its conflicts and how the country is perceived by the Western world.
The holy city of Jerusalem under fire, images like these coming in from Israel all day.
I'm thinking that probably shouldn't cross that point there.
Israel is a country of immense natural beauty, from Mediterranean beaches and desert oasis to ancient ruins, sacred sites and world-class culture. There are so many reasons to visit this amazing country, and in this series I'm going to show you why you should consider adding Israel and Palestine to your bucket list.
Alright, what is going on, guys, and welcome to Jerusalem, the most holy, religious, historically significant place in the entire world. Now, before I show you around the city, it's important to understand that there's so many different layers of history here. It can be difficult to know what you're looking at, and it can actually become a little bit overwhelming. So what I've done is I've put together a short history lesson for you to help you understand the video. So check it out.
The first historical mention of Jerusalem was in the Bible, where King David declared it as Israel's capital, and from that point on it was known as Zion. His son, Solomon, then builds the first temple. This is known today as the First Temple period. Years later, it was invaded by the Babylonians, who destroyed the temple, and the Jews were exiled until King Cyrus returned to rebuild the temple. This is known as the Second Temple period. Jerusalem was then conquered again, but this time by the Greeks, and Alexander the Great destroyed the temple for a second time. The Roman Empire was next to take control of the city, and King Herod began to rebuild, at least until the Great Jewish Revolt, where the temple was again destroyed. A new religion, Islam, then moves into the city, until the Crusades begin, and clear Jerusalem of all its inhabitants, killing thousands of Jews and Muslims. Many years later, the Jewish people returned from France and England, but are once again invaded by the Mamluks, who swiftly lost the city to the Ottoman Empire. World War I breaks out, the world enters new horrors never seen before, and the Ottoman Empire collapses, and the British declare Jerusalem as a national home for Jewish people, and eventually, after 20 more years of instability and warfare, Israel finally claims its independence.
So the old city of Jerusalem is actually divided into four quarters. You've got the Jewish quarter, the Muslim quarter, the Armenian quarter and the Christian quarter, and it just makes it a really nice mix of different cultures from around the world.
The cities of the ancient Roman Empire had the tradition of decorating main roads with spectacular stone columns. These streets were called corridor. Corridor was a Latin name given to North-South Street in most Roman cities. Jerusalem's corridor can be entered in the Jewish quarter, and today, just like ancient times, is a shopping street full of arts and various special goods. The Jewish Quarter is also home to the Western Wall Plaza. Also known as the Wailing Wall, it's the holiest place in Judaism. The plaza was created as an area of prayer when Israel captured the Old City in 1967. It was built by Herod the Great as the retaining wall of the Temple Mount complex. The Muslim Quarter is the largest neighbourhood in the Old City. It's a maze of bustling narrow streets, markets and mosques. Not unlike other Muslim cities around the world, it's easy to tell you're in the right place when you start to smell the amazing aroma of spices and freshly cooked Middle Eastern foods. The Armenian Quarter is the smallest neighbourhood in the Old City and one of the oldest Christian communities in the world. The Armenians were historically the first nation to formally accept Christianity as a religion. This part of the city is mostly closed off to the public, but you'll know when you've arrived because everything you see is painted green. Aside from being home to the holiest shrine in Christianity, the Christian Quarter is also home to the Via Dolorosa, the path in which Jesus walked to his crucifixion. To follow in his footsteps, you can visit all 14 stations of the cross, and it's a great way to see the Old City. The final stop of this short walk is the Church of Resurrection, also known as the Church of the Holy Sepulchre.
So I've just come out of the Old City. I went to visit the Church of the Holy Sepulchre, which, if you don't know, is the church that was built around the exact spot where Jesus was said to be crucified, and also inside is his tomb where he was later resurrected. Now, I don't believe in sugarcoating these travel experiences, so I'm going to tell you my honest opinion. For the holiest place in Christianity, I actually thought it had been a bit more peaceful and people praying and people being respectful, but actually I found it was the complete opposite. It was thousands of tourists bouncing off each other, trying to take selfies. You've got some guys left a forklift truck in the middle of the church, and it was really noisy, and I don't know how I feel about it. It just wasn't what I expected at all. So it's just something to keep in mind if you're coming here. You know what to expect now.
The Church of the Holy Sepulchre was built around what is believed to be the site of Jesus Christ's crucifixion. In the heart of the church, a marble slab in which his body was laid and wrapped after his death. Archaeological evidence and excavations show that originally the site lay outside the city walls until new walls were built in the 1st century and was actually a disused quarry until that point. The reconstructions and additions to the church over the centuries make it a very interesting place to explore, and visiting the tomb of Christ, which is also found inside the church, inspires many visitors from around the world.
And that, what you can see right behind me there, is actually the tomb of Jesus Christ. So this area that I'm in right now is the Jewish cemetery, and you're probably thinking to yourself, that's a bit of an odd place to be knocking about, Andy. And it kind of is, but there's only one reason that I've come here, and that is to see the Golden Gate. That is the Golden Gate, and it's Herodian, which means that it was built in the Second Temple period. But what's really fascinating about it, as I think I mentioned it earlier in the video, is that this is where the Jewish people believe that the Messiah will return, and they can pay anything up to $1 million to be buried here, because they think when he returns they will be resurrected first. That's mad, right? And then the gate actually faces out and looks over the Kidron Valley, which is also known as the Valley of the Shadow of Death. I think you may have heard that before. And down in that valley there's actually some quite significant archaeological finds, which I'm going to go and check out later. And then over there to the left, that is the Mount of Olives. I've also yet to go up there. You get amazing views of the city from over there. So I couldn't help but notice this grave here, 1990 to 2013. This person lived a very short life, right? Just one thing to bear in mind if you're planning a trip to Jerusalem, more so for the older people who want to come here. There are a lot of hills. I mean, I've done so much walking the past couple of days. My legs, my thighs, my calves, absolutely shattered. So it's just something to consider. I suppose maybe if you're a bit older you can get taxis around. So there's no way that I could come to Jerusalem without paying my respects to a certain man. I'm not Jewish, but I am a human being, so let's go and take a look. So inside this cemetery is the grave of Oskar Schindler. Now Oskar Schindler was responsible for saving thousands of lives during the Holocaust of World War II. So if you don't know who Oskar Schindler was, there's a very famous film about him starring Liam Neeson, and I definitely recommend that you watch that movie. It's both heartbreaking and inspiring story. So maybe stop watching this video and go and watch that first. It's much more important.
In early January 1933, the Nazi regime and its collaborators came into power. They had the belief that Germans were a superior race and wanted to create a racially pure state. By the end of World War II, when the true horrors were realised, it was predicted that over 6 million men, women and children were exterminated by being gassed, shot, raped and worked to death in concentration camps all over Europe. Jerusalem's Chamber of the Holocaust is one of the many memorial museums in the city. It has hundreds of salvaged artefacts and tablets of remembrance. Like most visitors, after paying a visit to the museum, I was literally left asking myself the question, how did this happen?
Oh man, that was a little bit tougher than I actually expected. I feel like I need to go and find a little corner and have a little cry. I'm good. So I've just made my way down into the valley. We've basically got some ancient excavations there behind me, and behind me this way we've got a couple of camels. So to be completely honest, I don't know much about these ruins here, apart from I think they predate the old city, but they're actually king's tombs. I'm probably going to have to rely on the voiceover once again for this, but I'm definitely going to explore them.
The main site in the Kidron Valley is a group of 3 2,000-year-old ancient tombs which have been cut into the side of the Mount of Olives. One of the tombs belonged to a priest family, the middle tomb belongs to Zachariah, and further north the tomb of Absalom, which was a tomb of King David's son. The valley itself, also known as the King's Valley, actually continues all the way to the Dead Sea, making the total length of it around 20 miles long.
Well, I'm going to have to go in. So I'm guessing those right there are the burial chambers. I need to be extremely careful that I don't get lost down here. Oh, it's amazing. Oh. Okay, but I think it's time, so we're getting out of here. So that's my Indiana Jones moment for this trip. That was so much fun.
That evening was the start of Hanukkah, so I headed back to the hostel to freshen up before heading out to get amongst the celebrations. The next morning, I grabbed a light breakfast and started to head towards the Mount of Olives, but then, this happened.
It's so funny, these guys don't care about the traffic at all. So Jerusalem is actually home to one of my favourite mysteries, or conspiracies, whichever way you want to look at it. And that is the mystery of the Ark of the Covenant. So the Ark of the Covenant was like a golden chest that held treasures beyond belief. And amongst them treasures was some stone tablets. And on those tablets was written the Ten Commandments. Now, the Ark of the Covenant has never been found. Historians believe that it could possibly still be buried under the old city of Jerusalem. Some believe that it went to England with the Crusaders. Some believe it's in Ethiopia. Some believe it went to Egypt. But I have my own theory. Personally, I like to think that Indiana Jones did in fact find it, and he's using it right now as a coffee table.
That belongs in a museum!
So I'm actually today on a full day tour. There's a chain of hostels in Israel called the Abraham Hostels, and every day they run tours all over the country and they are superb. So today I'm visiting here, which is Masada. I'll be visiting the Ein Gedi Nature Reserve, and also I'm going to go and have a float around in the Dead Sea, because you can't come to Israel without visiting the Dead Sea. And this fortress was actually the place where the Jewish people made the last stand against the Roman Empire. To really appreciate this place, I'm going to have to borrow some drone footage, just so you know like how high up we are and how difficult it must have been for the Romans to get up here. But you can tell just by looking here how good of a strategic position this actually was.
This isolated fortress in the Judean desert is where the Jewish rebels chose mass suicide over submission to Rome. Masada was fortified in the 1st century BC and later, during King Herod's rule, was enlarged and reinforced. When Herod died, the fortress was seized by the Roman Empire, but was later captured during the first revolt of the Jews. After the Roman Empire crushed the Jewish rebels in Jerusalem, Masada remained the last Jewish stronghold. It was under siege for almost 2 years before the walls were finally breached in around 73 AD.
So this is the bathhouse, and you can actually still see the original painting that they had in here.
When the Romans left Masada, it is believed that the stronghold was deserted for over 200 years until Christian hermits moved in around the 5th century BC.
So if you wanted to, you can actually get the cable car up and down the mountain, which makes it quite easy because it's quite a tough hike. But if you know me, I like to keep my destiny in my own hands and keep my feet firmly on the ground. Alright, that's enough talking for me for now. I've really got to pay attention to where I'm stepping, or else I'm going to fall off this mountain. So I think the next stop is the Ein Gedi Nature Reserve. Oh yes, what is going on guys, and welcome to the Dead Sea. But unfortunately we've got here and the sea's a little bit rough, so the lifeguard won't let us go in. So we've come all this way to float around in the Dead Sea, and we're not allowed to go in, which is a bit disappointing. But I might as well tell you a few facts about the Dead Sea anyway. So the Dead Sea is actually 10 times more salty than seawater, and that's why you're able to float. Israel owns half of it and Jordan owns half of it, and if you can see, it's quite misty today. That where the light is over there is actually Jordan. The water here is always warm because of the geothermal activity underneath, and it is in fact the lowest point on planet Earth. So I don't really know what to do now that I can't go in. There's also one other thing that I forgot to mention, that the Dead Sea isn't actually a sea, it is in fact a lake. Do you know what, I can't actually deny it. I am super disappointed that I can't go in. So I'm thinking now that my only option is to go to the lowest bar on earth. So even though I am a little bit disappointed, life could be worse, right?
Next time, I leave the chaotic cities of Israel behind and take a short journey into the heart of the Negev desert to the small town of Mitzpeh Ramon, which is situated on the rim of the world's largest erosion crater.
Oh, look at this! So this, guys, is an ancient Nabatean settlement. So this is actually the Israeli ibex. Well, I've gone and done it again. I'm officially lost in the desert this time.